Hello everyone, this is part 5 of What If Naruto Joined Anbu, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Shikamaru studied the papers in front of him, a faint frown tugging at the edges of his mouth. Shikamaru studied the papers in front of him, a faint frown tugging at the edges of his mouth. Sighing heavily, he crossed his arms and looked back up to the very troublesome woman that had become his Hokage. These midnight meetings were really starting to become bothersome. Are you sure this is correct? Our sources are impeccable, Tsunade assured him. She poured sake into 2 very tiny cups. Sake. Ignoring the offer, he stared back at the docents in front of him. Shikamaru could already feel the headache forming behind his eyes. He shuffled the papers in front of him before reading them over for the 3rd time. Akatsuki. Fingers clenching, he swallowed his instinctive hatred of that group. The very idea that any of the council would be willing to make a deal with them to sell out Naruto, even for the promise of immunity for the village, infuriated him. Are you wanting to shake down the council? Yes, Tsunade said. Do you have a problem with that? Pushing his anger down to be dealt with later, he concentrated on the facts. He could feel his eyes trying to cross with the effort to organize the information that had just been dumped in his lap. It shouldn't have surprised him that Team 7 troublemakers, all of them, was in the middle of this, but the links to the Hyuga clan were a bit more complicated. Scratching his jaw, he sighed. How troublesome. Kakashi doesn't believe there to be any loopholes. What do you think? Ibiki will be questioning the instigators that we have the names for. He has already put together his team and begun collecting various council members. We should have a complete set of names by tomorrow evening. Shikamaru frowned. We have someone watching the gates. Tsunade's smile was satisfied. Yes, I want to see Ibiki's reports on who exactly is involved. Of course, Tsunade agreed as she took another drink from the ridiculous cup in her hand. I'm going to demand a complete overhaul of the council. Shikamaru considered the list of councilmen before him and sighed. How many do we suspect are involved at this point? Too many, Tsunade said grimly. We can't prove that everyone was involved, but there is enough information linking names that it's time to get some fresh blood into the council seats. What concerns me the most is that the instigators seem to be in the Hyuga clan. Shikamaru sighed. Yes. Does our informant give reasons? The obvious. It was for the good of the village, the distaste at what Naruto is, and my personal favorite, ambition. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. Naruto will be my successor. He is still a little rough around the edges, but he will learn. Besides, her mouth curled at the edges. He has the most interesting talent of making friends wherever he goes. Shikamaru scratched his chin and mentally agreed with her. Even if he didn't count Team 7's uncomfortable loyalty to each other regardless of how troublesome certain members were. Naruto's ability to win people with political pull was hard to avoid. Himself, Neji, Tsunade, and of course, Sans Kazekage. The list was really too bothersome to put together. Naruto had an into every clan in the village and ties to their allies that couldn't be ignored. He was a good choice as a Hokage, even though Shikamaru had the nagging notion that Naruto was going to be even more troublesome than the woman before him. How does this play the part into the Hyuga ambition? For all the snipping at each other, the Uchiha and Hyuga managed to balance each other's attempts to gain power. With the Uchihas gone, many in the Hyuga clan believed that they should have more control of the village. She laced her fingers together. It is a problem we have been aware of for some time. I am sure your sources into the clans have been keeping an eye on the situation. Shikamaru slouched some more. Perhaps. Tsunade snorted. None of your avoidance tactics, Shikamaru. As I was saying, they no longer have such a large check in power. They have been angling to get the Uchiha clan disbanded completely before Sasuke can find the political backing he needs to assume his position as the head of the clan, and there have been talks about letting the village reabsorb the wealth and property of the clan as well. Shikamaru lifted a brow. That will not go over well with some of the other clans. Tsunade tilted her head in agreement. So far, that is all that has stayed their hand. And your own interference. Tsunade, smile was satisfied. Somewhat. Shikamaru sighed. So by removing Naruto, the Hyuga elders will have removed the greatest threat to their hopes to gain complete control of the village politics. I do not believe them to be so stupid that they will give the Akatsuki what they want when we can only guess that what they wish to use the Biju for. We have been a strong village for a long time. Tsunade said finally. Sometimes that power corrupts just as surely as the need to become strong does. Shikamaru gave a slight nod. Still, the gamble had been high. Not only was what they were doing treason, but by attempting to sell out Naruto, a shinobi, they had put the judgment in Tsunade's hands instead of the hands of their peers. He supposed he could understand why the council members involved in this plot had struck in the way they had chosen. Team 7 was becoming a force to be reckoned with. It was assumed that one day Naruto would be Hokage. It was likely Sakura would take over the running of the hospital in due time, and Sasuke would hold all the weight of his clan politically if no longer physically. So troublesome those three were. I assume Hiashi is unaware of the plot going on in his walls. It appears to be so, Tsunade said mildly. Hiashi is a proud man and a loyal one. But this will loosen the hold he has on the main house. Shikamaru stared at her. You're attempting to give Hinata political power. Tsunade leaned back in her chair, her fingers tapping lightly against the desk. Yes. Why? Shikamaru sat up straight, staring at her. To involve herself in the middle of a clan battle without proper reasoning was dangerous. Tsunade was silent for a moment longer. When the time comes for me to choose my replacement, who do your contacts say the majority of the clans will support? Shikamaru blinked at her. That would depend on who you choose. Tsunade's smile was amused. I believe most of the clans are already aware of who my choice is, Shikamaru. He inclined his head. They are aware of who it is rumored you will be choosing. And your thoughts? Shikamaru sighed. The clan elders have not spoken about this matter to either of my sources, but it is my belief that they will support you. That is not the case for the Hyuga. Tsunade said tersely. Mostly because of Naruto's hatred of their branch house policy and partly because of what he is. She pinned him with a stern expression. Hanabi will not make a good leader for her clan. She is brash, young, and she has not chosen wisely in her quest for power over her sister. Are you worried she will enforce the cage seal? Tsunade's expression was hard. You speak of Neji. Shikamaru shrugged, slouching a little in his chair. One of Hiashi's daughters must take the seal for the other to lead. Perhaps, Tsunade said softly. When she spoke again, her voice was hard. Hanabi and Hiashi have both been warned as to the consequences of enforcing the seal at this time, on either his children or against certain branch members. Shikamaru sighed. The dynamics of the village were going to change, and rapidly. Power would shift. More importantly, since it appeared most of the troubled members belonged to Hanabi's support, how exactly the power would shift to Hinata. This was going to be one very large mess that someone, probably him, was going to have to clean up. Sighing heavily, he reached for a cigarette. How troublesome. Sakura kicked her heels as she stared at the tea kettle that was sitting on the stove. This was becoming something of a nightly ritual, and she was quickly running out of herb packets. Sooner nights were just cold enough even in summer that she would appreciate the added warmth, and the tea did help her settle in for bed. Reaching up to rub her tired eyes, she paused at the sound of someone knocking. Oi! Sakura-chan, you awake? Naruto's low voice was muffled by the door, loud enough that she would hear it if she was awake, but low enough that if she was asleep or wanted to ignore him she could. She seriously debated ignoring him. It was late, she needed to go to bed, but... Hang on, Naruto, she called, jumping off the counter she had been sitting on. Shuffling in the ridiculous slippers she had started wearing, it wasn't that she was afraid of bugs, just that the bugs here were rather nasty, and flicked open the locks on her door. Hey, Naruto said with a smile, leaning his shoulder against the door jamb. What are you doing still up? Not sleeping, obviously, Sakura drawled, poking him. Are you finished with your little midnight tour with Gaara? Naruto rubbed his shoulder, smirking. Watching us. Rather hard to miss you. She pointed out, opening the door in a silent invitation to enter. It was either sand, more sand, building covered in sand, or you two sleepless fools. I don't think it's good diplomacy to call Gaara a fool. Naruto teased as he followed her into the kitchen. We could get into trouble for talking behind his back. Since I've called him such to his face, I think we will be okay. Sakura returned. She dangled a tea packet in front of him. Want one? Nah, I'm good. She lifted a brow, letting her eyes run over his form. The sand garb hid the muscle she was used to seeing in Konoha, but there was something a little more dangerous to this outfit. A little more anticipation. You're getting enough fluids, aren't you? Naruto jumped up onto her previous place on the counter and rolled his eyes. Yes, Mednon Haruno. I am getting plenty of fluids. She quirked a brow at him and then shrugged. If you pass out from heat exhaustion, I'm going to let Gaara deal with you. No mercy, even for your teammates. Naruto teased, his smile open and easy. Sakura snorted at him and as she poured the hot water over the bag of herbs. Not when you're being an idiot. But since I have been up to my elbows in your insides at least twice, we'll call it even. Sakura suggested. Right here, Sakura-chan. He made, holding a hand to his heart. Right here. If you can survive Sasuke trying to shove a Chidori through your chest, you can handle a couple of heart palpitations. She teased as she judged how long she had let her tea steep. Naruto snorted and crossed his arms. So I take it this isn't a one-night ordeal. Sakura blinked at him as she tossed the packet into a trash container. I beg your pardon. Naruto pointed at the stove. You couldn't turn that thing on when we first got here. Now you're acting like you've been using it for years. How many cups of tea have you been making, Sakura? She lifted a brow, as she carefully tasted the hot drink. A little bitter. What makes you think I'm just not compiling my mental report for Tsunade? Naruto jumped down and shoved his hands in his pockets, considering her with the expression that never failed to run goosebumps down her arms. It was an expression that told her there was more going on behind his eyes that he let on. The one that suggested the fox wasn't as far beneath the skin as everyone in Konoha liked to believe. Sakura, you only drink tea like Tsunade drinks sake when you have something on your mind. I thought we had agreed that you could talk to me about anything. Sakura pursed her lips, considering. Feeling suddenly, ridiculously, nervous, she turned and set the mug down before taking a deep breath. This was absurd. She had already made her decision. She was going to face this. Squaring her shoulders, she turned to face Naruto. You're right. I do have a problem. Naruto blinked at her before something eased in his shoulders. All right then, Sakura-chan. Let's go sit down where we can talk about it and I'll see what I can do to help. Sakura shook her head, taking a long deep breath. She was not nervous. This was Naruto. If he was going to reject her, he would have done it when she was 12 and crying brat. Not now. Not after everything. Her palms started to sweat and she hated it. This isn't, oh screw it. Sakura growled before moving forward. She closed the distance between them in 2 steps, rose up on her tiptoes, and pressed her mouth solidly against his. His lips were chapped from the wind and his body was rigid under her hands. Pulling back, she stared up into his face. His eyes were wide and she licked her lips, locking her knees so she wouldn't bolt. She would not run. She would deal with this. Naruto. The light came back on behind his eyes at the sound of her voice and she was hardly aware of the way he was backing her up until her back hit the cold box. Bracing his arms on either side of her body, he stared down at her, pupils filled with red sparks. Why? His question stung. Did he think she was playing? Did he think she wouldn't do this without thought? But instead of arching her back and snapping, she took a slow breath and steadied herself. I'm not playing with you. His posture shifted and the air around her felt very confined. I didn't say you were, Sakura. She studied his face for a long moment before nodding. I'm not in love with you, Naruto. At least I don't think so, but I won't lie and say there isn't anything between us either. I would like to find out what that is. He leaned forward so that their noses were almost touching and she had to clench her fists to keep from reaching for him. So you decided to tell me that by kissing me. His hands were sliding down the fridge and then they were tangling in her hair. She swallowed and his eyes lowered to watch her tea move. I figured I owed you 1. Or 2. Was it 3? She whispered. Besides, aren't you supposed to be a man of action instead of? He mouth pressed into hers, slanting across her lips like a brand. She wrapped her arms around his waist and stepped into his kiss, tilting her chin to give him better access. In return, he pressed up against her. He was so warm compared to the cold of the fridge behind her and she dug her nails into his back, whimpering. When they finally pulled back, Sakura was uncertain how long she had allowed herself to sink into the heat and feel of him, and they were both panting. The smile that was slowly tugging the corner of Naruto's lips upward made her stomach drop and her cheeks heat. He untangled his hands from her hair to brush her bangs out of her eyes. Do you know how long I've waited for you to admit that? Sakura shrugged, feeling self-conscious. I didn't want to risk our friendship. Instead of rolling his eyes or saying something ridiculous, he brought his hands up so that he was cradling her face between his palms. Do you trust me, Sakura? Yes. That was a question she didn't have to think about twice. Ever. Then trust me when I say it would take more than you could possibly do to me to ever lose our friendship. But, he covered her lips with his fingers. Nothing, Sakura-chan. How do you know that? She blurted out quickly when he moved his hand away. Because I know you and I know me. He said with a shrug, his smile sure. Even if nothing comes of this except some very good stolen moments, here his eyes burned, you have at least given me a chance. That's all I ever wanted. That's all I can ask for. She studied him for a long time before relaxing. Her fingers loosened their hold on his shirt. You really are crazy. Maybe, he said cheerfully, deliberately sliding his fingertips down the side of her face before taking 2 very careful steps back. But you like me anyway. She sighed. Yes. He grinned. Good. Now go to bed. His eyes cut over to her mischievously. Unless you want to work on those stolen moments. She swatted him. Naruto. Can't blame a guy for trying. She huffed. You are going to have to work much harder than that to get stolen moments, you idiot. His smile was predatory and she could feel the blush working its way from her tea into her cheeks. I do love a good challenge, Sakura. Clearing her tea, she pointed to the door. Good night, Naruto. Good night, he echoed as he started to walk to the door. If you have any trouble sleeping, I'll go find Kankuro. He deserved it. Now go away. That's not nice, he scolded as he slipped into the hall. You can't just say. She shut the door with a slam and flicked the locks into place. Maybe this would work out after all. Not cool, Sakura-chan. Kakashi adjusted the book so that he could easily peer over the edges of the pages without looking too conspicuous. It was amazing how many people ignored someone who they believed was reading inappropriate material and how often they thought it made him blind and dumb. Turning a page, he discreetly scanned the area that was waiting for the results of the emergency council meeting. Everyone looked comfortable, relaxed. Either they were not expecting the exploding tag that Tsunade was currently holding in her hand, or they had no idea that something was going down inside those oak doors. Kakashi personally liked to believe the first. There were too many people connected to the council. Too many ears, too many eyes. No, some of them were just biding their time. It would be a long time before they cleaned all the rats out of their holes. That was fine with him. Ibiki was going to go through them with a fine-toothed comb, and anyone stupid enough to go after his team later in some misplaced sense of revenge was going to have their hands full. A small smile tugged at his mouth. He was hopeful that some of them would come after him, but he didn't think he would be given such an opportunity. He paused in his reading as the council door opened. Hiashi was unsurprisingly the first to exit. There was an expression on his face that Kakashi had only seen once or twice in his life. He felt no pity for the head of the Hyuga clan. Hanabi was a brat who didn't care about who she had to run over to gain power, and Hinata was too soft-spoken to be taken seriously without some serious leverage. Kakashi had seen the Neji and Hinata sparring, and what Neji had over Hinata in sheer power the small Hyuga made up for in speed and creativity. That sort of mind would do well for her clan if just given the chance. If the developing tick under Hiashi's left eye told him anything, it indicated that the first step in securing Hinata as the heir to the clan had taken place. The next few hours would be critical to see how the clan would react. More importantly, how Hiashi would react. Shikamaru was fairly sure that he would be forced to name Hinata heir, but until that moment came there were many things that could go wrong. He hoped Neji was keeping a close eye on his cousin. Closing his book, Kakashi memorized names and faces that exited the council room. Many of them were pale and several of them were sweating. Some didn't leave the room at all. Making mental notes, he waited until the doors shut again and turned on his heel. It was time to go and check on his wayward student. Sasuke lifted his eyes from the scroll he had been reading when there was a knock on his door. Since she had been standing on his landing for the past 5 minutes, he had almost expected her to walk away. He wasn't exactly surprised that she was stopping by, but he hadn't expected her to be alone. Hinata. She looked up at the sound of her name. Sasuke looked around her and lifted a brow when he confirmed that her cousin was nowhere to be found. Sasuke-san, she said quietly. Neji is not here. May I come in? He opened the door, carefully scanning the area before shutting and locking it behind her. Some of the tension in her shoulders seemed to release once his traps snapped into place and her pale eyes scanned the distinct lack of windows with something like approval. Motioning to the small table he had been previously reading at, he headed into the kitchen to start a pot of tea. Turning once he was satisfied, he settled his hip against the counter and considered the Hyuga heir. She had settled at his table and was watching him with her hands clasped in her lap. Since they were her best weapon, she was deliberately handicapping herself. You have heard about the council meeting this morning. Her tone made it almost a statement, but he nodded anyway. She nodded and straightened her spine. Then you are aware of the grief my clan has caused you. Again he nodded. There were many things that her statement could have alluded to. The council had attempted to drive his clan into the ground and they had attempted to destroy Naruto, his teammate. Both gave him grounds to claim fault. If the spark, he would almost call it temper, behind her eyes said anything, she was clearly aware of everything that had occurred during the council meeting this morning. Remembering the way her eyes had once followed Naruto, he decided that her words were for Naruto and for those he now protected. This morning my father placed the cage seal on Hanabi. Hinata's voice held no triumph, instead she just looked tired. Officially, this was done because of her connections to the elders who are currently being charged with treason. She couldn't be trusted by the village after this and so was no longer in contention to be heir. Unofficially, this was done to save face. There is no proof that Hanabi was involved in the plot, but there is no proof that she was not. My father cannot lose the support of the clan or we will never resolve our internal problems. So he chose this as his path. My father is getting older, Sasuke-san. Her words were soft, but there was an edge there that Sasuke could appreciate. He hides it well, but he is getting tired. He had already started training Hanabi quietly about clan economics and strategies and he does not approve of me as heir. Sasuke studied her face before turning to take the water off the burner before it could start to whistle at him. Pouring the water over the leaves, he settled the teapot onto a tray and added 2 mugs before setting it down on the table to seep. Taking a chair across from Hinata, he laced his fingers together. What does this have to do with the Uchiha clan, Hinata? You will need support to rebuild your clan, Sasuke-san. Hinata said quietly. I am now in a position to offer that support. Sasuke was silent as he poured them both some tea. Your elders will not appreciate that move. Her smile was tight. What better way to fish out the rest of the traitors? He lifted a brow. That is dangerous. Yes, she agreed, lifting the mug and cradling it in her hands as if suddenly chilled. There are many things I plan on doing that are going to be dangerous. He studied her. His clan would grow. He knew Hinata was aware of that, as she was also clearly aware of the traditional animosity between their clans. Leaning back, he studied her. You would like our clans to grow as allies. I would like us to try. Hinata said finally. Her eyes were hard. I cannot close the rift between the branch and the main house completely. Not in my lifetime. I can abolish the practice of the cage seal, but it will take work and years of struggle before I can win my family over to the reality of change. Her eyes grew distant. But I made a promise to someone and I will keep it. Sasuke nodded. Hinata drew in a deep breath. What I would like to do, Sasuke-san, is offer your clan support. We cannot do much, not with my father still keeping an eye on things, but Neji and I will do what we can both politically and economically to aid you. You will need assistance in learning as your clan develops, and I would like to offer you ours. Sasuke considered her offer. Is this his payment for the debt your clan's actions have caused? Hinata shook her head. No, Sasuke-san. This is in payment of a different promise. The debt my clan owes on that front is political and shall be paid politically. The elders who are left are in agreement with me on this. Sasuke took a sip of his tea. I shall consider your offer. Hinata nodded and set her mug down. Standing, she bowed. Thank you for your time, Uchiha-sama. May your clan be prosperous. And may yours weather the storm of time. He returned the old greeting and it felt a little clumsy on his tongue. She nodded and he stood and followed her to the door. As he opened the door for her, he studied her out of the corner of his eye. Hinata. She turned. The undercurrents of the council's actions have not yet settled. She nodded her head. Yes. Watch your back, Sasuke-san. Shutting the door, he flipped the locks back into place. Rolling his N, he checked his traps and lifted his eyes to the small window in his kitchen. He had plans to make. It wouldn't do for his teammates to return home and him be caught off guard by their questions. Sakura checked her pack again to make sure she hadn't left anything important behind. A week and a half in Suna had depleted her gear, but she was still worried she had left something. Naruto was off gathering supplies with Gaara for their return trip home. They were supposed to meet up with them at the gate in half an hour, but Sakura had gotten bored and wandered down early. Temari and Kankuro were already there and seemed amused by her antsy behavior. Ready to go home too quickly, Sakura-chan? Kankuro teased. Yes, Sakura said bluntly. You know, the longer I'm here the higher the odds that I'm going to have to save your ass, and I would like to save myself the trouble. Temari laughed. That's probably truer than you know. Kankuro looked offended. Or Sakura thought he did. The face paint made it difficult to determine. That's not nice, Sakura. Sakura stuck her hand on her hips and smirked. First Sakura-chan and then Sakura. Make up your mind, paint boy. Kankuro straightened himself to his full height. So, did you manage to catch yourself a blonde Junin while you were here? Sakura flung one of her energy bars at his head and was satisfied when it hit with a thud. Temari gave Sakura a long look out of the corner of her eye and smirked. The next thing Sakura knew, she was being dragged away from the gate and into the market. Sputtering, she stumbled a little before she caught her balance and managed to find her feet. Hey, Temari. Kankuro hollered. I was talking with her. Don't worry, little brother. I'll bring the leaf nin back in one piece. The blonde promised, waving her hand as she continued to drag Sakura along. As soon as you explain what is going on between you and Naruto. She finished in a hiss. What? Temari snorted. Do I look like I am completely oblivious? Just because Kankuro and Gaara wouldn't see a relationship if it walked up, hit them in the face and s them in with its teeth does not mean I have such problems. Sakura shot her an annoyed look. So I should tell Shikamaru no s. Temari snorted. Boy's too lazy to do that sort of work. Besides, it's more fun to watch his eyes widen while you drag the zipper down yourself. Sakura blinked several times, and then violently shook her head. That's an image I did not need. You'll get used to it. Temari said lazily as she dragged her to a bench. Now, what kind of dango do you want? We can pretend we were off doing girly things before you left and Gaara will just have to deal with it. You mean you're not going to interrogate me? Sakura teased. I was attempting to be diplomatic. Don't run. I'll just break your ribs. Sakura snorted. You can try. I'll do more than try, honey. Temari assured her before waking over to the little stand and buying them both some dango and sauntering back. Now, I have officially bribed you. Start talking. Sakura sighed. The dango looked delicious and Temari had even brought them small glasses of tea. Taking a careful bite, she sighed again. All right, I give. Temari's smile was wicked. I know. I don't know what's going on between Naruto and myself. Sakura said mildly. But I told him I was willing to find out. Temari chewed for several long seconds. Well, that's better than what I told Shikamaru. Sakura lifted a brow. Oh, I told him I was in it purely for the S. I suppose I can see that, Sakura mused. Just trying not to visualize Shika-en. Temari opened her mouth and Sakura, realizing what she said, shoved her last dango into Temari's mouth. No, do not, ever. Temari rolled her eyes as she chewed. You're such a prude. Yes, well, I have to work with him. I do not need any images. I'm sure that Naruto will help you wash your brain out. He has very nice abs. Temari said as they started their walk back to the group conversing near the gate. Sakura cut her a glance. If you think I am going to talk about him at all, you're crazy. Temari smirked. I have my ways. Have your ways for what? Naruto asked, bouncing a little on his heels. He had enjoyed his stay in sand, but it was time to go home now. He wanted a long, long shower. He cut his eyes over to Sakura. A long shower. Weapons, Sakura said, waving her hand. Nothing important. Ignoring the sudden gleam in his eyes, she bowed low to Gaara. Thank you for your hospitality. Temari and Kankuro will see you to the border. Gaara said. Be safe. Naruto slapped Gaara on the arm. Don't worry. I'll be back to bother you soon enough. Next time, I'll bring miso ramen. Gaara nodded. Farewell. Sakura flopped down next to Naruto, finger combing her still damp hair. 2 days into the border of Fire Country and they had finally had the chance to stop and douse themselves in a stream. I never thought I was going to be clean again. Why does sand have to get everywhere? Naruto smiled at her, eyes catching sparks from the fire. I never did show you what was so beautiful about the place. She rolled her eyes. You just want to drag me back there again. Or, come on Sakura-chan. You know you had fun. Shaking her head, she studied the fish Naruto had caught earlier while she set up camp. I think these are about done. Yeah, he agreed. Handing her a stick, he carefully blew on his meal. Man, I missed fish while we were there. And don't think I don't know you were changing the subject. Sakura rolled her eyes, sucking in cold air as her tongue sizzled with the hot food. Nodding, she chewed quickly and swallowed. Yeah, I missed fish. He eyed her for a moment before letting it drop. I wonder what's changed at home. He mused. I bet Sasuke hasn't painted his walls yet. Sakura's stomach dropped. Averting her eyes from his thoughtful face, she bit down on another bite of the fish and was relieved to find it had cooled a little. Chewing stubbornly, she ignored the sudden sharp gaze she could feel boring into her expression. Sakura-chan. Not right now, Naruto. Please. There was a long silence, and when he spoke, his tone was deep. Sakura-chan, does this have to do with Sasuke? She bit her lip and considered his words. Shaking her head slowly, she turned to look at him. No, not that I know. She took a deep breath. I can't talk about it, Naruto. Direct orders. She hated to hide behind that card, but she was not willing to talk to him about it. She had promised Tsunade and it had been a direct order. However, the tension in Naruto's shoulders eased and she could read his expression again even if his eyes were still too serious. Okay. She went back to her fish feeling a little nauseous. What was she going to do if she went home and the Akatsuki had killed someone important to Naruto? Taking a deep, calming breath, she shoved her emotions into the proper compartments. Later. I bet Ayami is still making eyes at Kakashi. Sakura turned and blinked. Ayami. The girl who works at the ramen stand. Yup. He even gets free meals occasionally. Any chance he returns her feelings? Naruto pondered that. I don't know. Kakashi-sensei isn't easy to read like Sasuke. You have to see how many times he twitches to guess exactly how far things run. Twitches. Naruto waved his hand. Yeah, like with Gaara. Naruto, Gaara doesn't twitch. No, he smiles. Gaara doesn't have facial expressions. Or well, he doesn't. Besides, maniac cur, and, how many ways can I splatter your insides, sort of expressions. Sakura-chan. His eyes were dancing with laughter. He smiles. Well, okay, they're a bit more like grimaces, but you can totally see them in the corner of his mouth. Sakura pulled back and pointed a finger at him, struggling to contain her mirth. You've been staring at Gaara's mouth. Naruto blinked before shrugging. It's not like he has eyebrows. Her lips twitched. Well, no. But Sasuke doesn't smile and he does have eyebrows, so you don't have those excuses. Nah. Team has the most expressive eyebrows ever. I didn't notice that until he came back, but you're right. Sakura agreed. Naruto stared at her. What did you look at? His ass. Sakura said demurely. He has a very nice one. Naruto crossed his arms. Oh. She patted him on the head before standing up to go and collect the gear they had set out. Yes, he does. Don't worry though, I have it on good authority that you have a great set of abs. Naruto's grin was edged and wicked. Care to check 'em out? I've seen them. You have first watch, Sakura sing-songed at him. So if you want to wash up before you start. No mercy for your poor teammate. Naruto teased as he scooped his things up. Sakura shot him a saucy grin. I told you, hotshot. You're going to have to work a lot harder than that. His grin widened. You shouldn't bait a man, Sakura. You might find yourself bent over a tree. I'll keep that in mind. You do that, he suggested as he walked away, putting a little swing in his hips. That way you have no excuse when I sun with my teeth. Sakura picked up a rock and hurled it at him. Eavesdropper. His laughter echoed back at her. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.